You're listening to the micro version of the Savage Lovecast. www.savagelovecast.com.
If you're stuck in a relationship quandary, or if you're looking for sexual harmony, well, there's nothing you can't ask on the Savage Lovecast.
Screw as I say, not as I screw. They've always been my favorite brand of Republican hypocrite. The anti-abortion conservative who gets caught with a dick in his mouth. Hey there, Larry Craig, Idaho's Larry Craig. The anti-abortion Republican member of Congress who pressures his mistress and his ex-wife into getting abortions. Hey there, Tennessee's U.S. House Representative Scott DeJarlis, reelected actually by his anti-choice constituents after that story broke a few years ago. My favorite screw as I say, not as I screw Republican, Bristol Palin. Remember her? Well, maybe not at this point. Maybe there's been so much incident in the last few years that nobody remembers Bristol Palin but me. But you might remember her mother, Sarah Palin. She was the governor of Alaska and John McCain's game changer of a pick for running mate in 2008. We used to think way back in 2008 that Sarah Palin was the dumbest, dimmest, most malignant politician we would ever see on the national stage. Oh, 2008. We were innocent then. Anyway, Sarah Palin, big backer of abstinence education programs, sex ed programs that tell young people to wait to have sex until after marriage, while at the same time offering young people either no information about birth control or misinformation about birth control. Misinfo like birth control doesn't work, so why bother with birth control? Abstinence educators, and I am furiously making little bunny air quotes around the microphone when I say educators after abstinence. Abstinence educators don't believe sex is something we're wired to want to do and that younger people are going to get horny and try stuff even in the absence of information about sex and consent and birth control and disease prevention. Abstinence educators, air quotes, they believe, or more likely pretend to believe, that sex is something you hear about and then want to try, like sriracha or ayahuasca or the bacon maple bars at Voodoo Donuts in Portland, Oregon. Anyway, Bristol was a big backer of abstinence education programs herself. She even became a spokesperson for abstinence education programs after she got knocked up before marriage as a teenager. Then she did it again, got pregnant again out of wedlock, despite all the abstinence education she was getting and giving, despite all the abstinence education she got and the abstinence education program she gave. Because when it came to abstinence education, Bristol was a pitcher and a catcher. Anyway, while we're on the subject, did you hear 2 new big studies about abstinence education, both published in the Journal of Adolescent Health, just came out? Both found that these fucking programs, which the Trump administration is pumping new money back into, not just ineffective, but actively harmful, which is the same thing past studies of abstinence education have found. The weight of scientific evidence shows these programs do not help young people delay initiation of sexual intercourse. Writes John Santelli, author of one of the studies or co-author of one of the studies. These programs simply do not prepare young people to avoid unwanted pregnancies or sexually transmitted diseases. That was certainly true, at least on the pregnancy front in Bristol Palin's case. But that was then. That was 2008. This is now. And screw as I say, not as I screw, Republicans are out. What with the pussy grabber in chief holed up in the Oval Office, and Liberty University President Jerry Falwell Jr.'s tongue permanently holed up in his hole. We can screw however we like these days without being lectured by the GOP. So, yeah. Goodbye, screw as I say, not as I screw Republicans. Hello, your state is underwater? Fuck you. My state is underwater? Save us, Republicans. Doesn't quite roll off the tongue as well, but it captures the hypocrisy on display this week. Hurricane Harvey slammed into Texas, and Houston is underwater. Communities are devastated. Damage estimates right now, $40-50 billion range with dozens of lives lost. And Texas's senators, Ted Cruz and John Cornyn, they've asked for emergency federal aid for communities devastated by the storm. And Texas deserves that federal aid. And this cocksucking, podcasting blue state voter, also per Joe Biden, this patriotic taxpayer, is happy to see my tax dollars go to help the suffering people of Texas. But I am old enough to remember not just Bristol Palin in 2008 and Sarah Palin, but I am old enough to remember Hurricane Sandy, which struck the East Coast in 2012. Texas's 2 U.S. senators at the time Ted Cruz and John Cornyn, still Texas's U.S. senators, opposed sending federal aid to New York and New Jersey because fuck you, New York, and fuck you, New Jersey. Every member of the U.S. House from Texas, save one, 35 out of 36 members of the congressional delegation from Texas in the House opposed sending federal aid to the victims of Hurricane Sandy, which did $70 billion worth of damage and more than 200 people died. Right now, again, Harvey looking like it may do $40 to $50 billion in damage and dozens may die. Those numbers may rise. And no, this is not a contest. Texas needs help now, just as New York and New Jersey needed help then. And Texas is going to get that help, and it should get that help, and I support sending that help to Texas. It would be nice to see Texas repay the nation's kindness by sending better people to Congress. A couple of senators, maybe, who care not just about the residents of their own state, but about Americans in all 50 states. That would be a good place to start, Texas. Again, people are hurting right now in Texas, particularly in Houston. The fastest and easiest way for you to personally send help is to text Harvey to 90999. That'll make a $10 donation to the American Red Cross. I just did it. Please join me. Finally, and again, people are hurting right now in Texas, particularly in Houston. The fastest and easiest way for you to help personally is to text Harvey to 90999. That'll make a $10 donation to the American Red Cross. All right, coming up on today's show, lots of your questions, lots of my answers, and on the Magnum subscription edition to the Savage Lovecast that you can subscribe to at savagelovecast.com. It's ad-free and twice as long. We had a lot of calls in the last couple weeks from parents on how to deal with talking about sex with their kids. So we brought in Deb Hauser, president of Advocates for Youth, an organization dedicated to championing programs that recognize young people's right to honest sexual health information, also known as the opposite of the kind of information kids get in abstinence education programs. You parents out there are going to want to listen. Subscribe again to the Magnum at savagelovecast.com. Twice as long, more guests, more calls, no ads. All that coming up on today's show. This episode is brought to you by Blinkist. Over 2,000 of the best-selling nonfiction books transformed into powerful packs you can read or listen to in just 15 minutes. Go to Blinkist.com/savage to start your free trial today.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the easiest way to create a beautiful website, blog, or online store for you and your ideas. Squarespace features an elegant interface, beautiful templates, and incredible 24/7 customer support. Try Squarespace at squarespace.com and enter offer code SAVAGE at checkout to get 10% off. That's squarespace.com, offer code SAVAGE.
Today's episode is brought to you by Blue Apron. Blue Apron delivers all fresh, high-quality ingredients and recipes you need to create delicious home-cooked meals. Get your first 3 meals for free by going to blueapron.com/savage.
Hi, Dan. I'm a 27-year-old woman living in New York City, and even though you mostly deal with romantic relationship quandaries, I'm hoping that you can help me with a familial relationship quandary. I'm a staunch Democrat in a family of Trump-voting Republicans. Family gatherings tend to be difficult for me because we're an argumentative Italian family, and none of my family members are afraid to give their political beliefs. Since Trump's election, the best way we've been able to deal with one another is to ignore politics completely, and it usually works. This weekend, however, after the horrific events in Charlottesville, the topic came up while I was home visiting. I argued that our president was disgusting for not disavowing these white nationalists, that white supremacy has no place in our country, and that these symbols of hate, like the statue of Robert E. Lee, should be removed. My father gave all of the typical Republican responses, that we shouldn't remove history, that there are both sides to a situation, and that this isn't Trump's fault, that all these white nationalists are behaving the way they are. He told me that I am lost because I refuse to see the other side of the argument. I'm obviously sickened by this. I love my father, but I don't like him or his beliefs. And as much as I want to be able to ignore these political discussions with my family, my silence weighs heavily on me because it feels like inaction. All of this is further complicated by the fact that my mother, 2 brothers, and my father are all going on a 10-day family vacation in September, and I'm scared of what kinds of arguments we'll have while I'm there. I'm the lone liberal in this family, and I'm always accused of flying off the handle. I want to have a relationship with my parents and family while still doing the right thing. How the fuck do I do this? How am I going to get through this vacation? Do you have any advice for me?
I have 2 bits of practical advice for you on getting through this vacation. If you go on it, you can have a relationship with your family without locking yourself in a room with them for 10 straight fucking days. You can draw a line. You're an adult woman. You don't have to go on vacations with mom and dad like you're in middle school or grade school. You can say, hey, I'm taking my vacation days to go someplace that I can hang out with sane people. See you at Thanksgiving. You don't have to go. But if you must go, if you feel compelled to go, stock up on marijuana edibles. That would be my first bit of practical advice. You can also hold them kind of hostage. Just download apps for Planned Parenthood, Black Lives Matter movement if they have an app, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, the Democratic Socialists of America. Download a bunch of apps, and every time mom, dad, or your sibling start in on their right-wing talking points, don't engage. Just open the app and start donating $10, $10, $10 every 30 seconds while they talk, and look at them and say, the longer you go on, the more of my money is going to Planned Parenthood, Black Lives Matter, the Democratic Socialists of America, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. So you might want to shut the fuck up. We might want to change the fucking subject, because right now we're having a little mini fundraiser right here on this cruise ship for Planned Parenthood. All right? And that might incentivize changing the fucking subject. It might convince your dad and your mom and your sib to let it go and talk about something else. You'll probably only have to run through a couple of $100 donations to Planned Parenthood or Black Lives Matter before your parents will know to change the fucking subject when they see you just reaching for your phone. And while I do believe that white people, and I don't know that you're white, but I'm going to infer that you're white if your entire fucking family are right-wing Trump supporters, probably white. Occam's razor, probably white. We have a responsibility to argue with and confront our shitty family members, whatever form their shittiness takes, whether it's racist support for Trump or other shittiness of other shitty varieties. We have a responsibility to engage and argue. But there comes a point where those arguments will bear no fruit, where you're not moving them and they're not moving you. And I think once everybody knows where everybody stands, silence is not necessarily inaction. You have taken action again and again and again. At a certain point, you can look at that action and say, this is a brick wall I am now beating my head against. And you can communicate to your family how you feel about their positions and that you disagree with them without engaging in that same argument again. You can communicate your disagreement by ostentatiously popping a pot lozenge into your mouth and opening a book. You can communicate your disagreement by opening up that Planned Parenthood or Democratic Socialists of America app and start throwing money at these organizations that your family probably loathes. You can decline to engage with your family occasionally for your sanity, and then pick the moment when you do want to jump in, when you don't want to pop the pot lozenge or open the app, and you do want to have a throwdown. You do want to have a really rough and tumble argument with these folks that they know where you stand, and maybe you'll plant a seed and they will move. Maybe not, probably not at this point, but you're not a coward if you don't take the bait every single time. Pick the times when you do want to engage and do want to have the argument, but there are times when you can let that arched eyebrow or popped pot lozenge or that large donation you just made to Planned Parenthood do the talking for you. Fill the silence for you. There's nothing silent about that donation you just made in Dad's name to the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee.
Hey, Dan. So my fiance went to an Ivy League school. We're white. And his best friend has a brother who is an alt-right nationalist supporter, if not is part of the alt-right Nazi regime, if you will. It's a little bit unclear where the distinction is with him. So over the weekend, everything happened in Charlottesville, and my fiance is on a text chain with all these guys because they all do fantasy football together, and the fantasy football chain ended up being a discussion of Charlottesville because one of his friends shared and said, my God, can you believe what happened? And they all started making jokes about how the protester who was killed should have gotten out of the way and it was her fault and she was the agitator. And my fiance was super appalled and told those guys to go fuck off, told them that he couldn't believe they were sympathizing with the Nazis, that they were saying that they're no better than Breitbart, et cetera, et cetera. He was very, very upset. And I supported him and I was proud of him because he doesn't necessarily stand up to these guys that often because they just talk about football. They're not, these like political wonks. And it's been several days of him being upset by it. And remember, it's not the alt-right guy who's my fiance's best friend, it's his brother. So my fiance and his friend have had a couple of conversations about this, and his friend keeps kind of being an apologist and saying, I'm really sorry that you feel this way. You know, I don't get involved in politics. I just kind of keep my head down. I think that this will pass. Everyone's just worked up about something that doesn't really affect us. And the best friend has twin babies, and they have a birthday party coming up. And when the babies were born, they were like, we're not going to have a party now, but when they reach a year old, we're going to have a big party. So this party's been in the works for, a year and 9 months, if you will. And we, of course, were going to go, and now my fiance is very confused about whether or not we should go because the brother might be there, and also the cowardice of his friends is like appalling to him. And we've had a lot of conversations about, Nazis are the line. Also, we're Jewish, and obviously there are a lot of concerns here about just kind of like where you draw the line on the friendships that you have and the people who you support, and how much love you should show people, and how much you should say at the end of the day, like, there are certain things that are non-negotiables, and this is one of them. So should we just forget about the friend who is an apologist? Is there anything for us to do to kind of make it clear to him that this is not okay, beyond all of the ways that he said this is not okay, and is not going to the party to support his little babies also a way to make it clear that this is not okay? Or is that like drawing the line on our friendship and really putting up this huge wall that may not be able to ever be taken down again? I really don't know what to do, and I'm really torn. Sometimes I'm like, they've been friends for 20 years, and let's just let this go. And then sometimes I think, no, this is really not okay, and we're getting married. And of course they got to save the dates the day that the show was supposed to happen, so it's been a little bit like, oh my God, all these people, we don't really want them coming to the wedding. And I don't know. I just need some help. I need some guidance.
I'm going to share with you, before I give you my thoughts, something I just read at The Forward, which is a Jewish publication. Quote, as white supremacists converged on Charlottesville for their violent Unite the Right rally, some of them menaced the city's historic Beth Israel synagogue during Shabbat services, standing across from the building with semi-automatic weapons in their hands. Had they tried to enter, I don't know what I could have done to stop them, but I couldn't take my eyes off them either, wrote Alan Zimmerman, the president of the Reform Congregation, about the neo-Nazis he stared down as congregants prayed inside. Zimmerman said the events of the day left him feeling worried about the country. When services ended, my heart broke as I advised congregants that it would be safer to leave the temple through the back entrance rather than through the front, and to please go in groups, he wrote. All right, it's 2017, and in an American city, we have neo-Nazis with semi-automatic weapons sieg heiling in front of a synagogue, and the Jews inside having to sneak out the back. Jews in America in 2017 having to sneak out the back of the synagogue and being advised to go in groups for their own safety, lest they be attacked or gunned down by the neo-Nazi white supremacists massed in front of their synagogue. Yeah, I don't think this is a time where you get to keep your head down and claim that this doesn't affect you. If your friend with the Nazi brother chooses keeping the peace with his Nazi brother over standing with his Jewish friends at a moment like this, then your friend isn't worth your time and doesn't certainly deserve an invitation to your wedding. And I wouldn't, if I were you, if I were me, go to a party at that person's house. A person who says that he's just going to keep his head down. This doesn't affect me. These Nazis marching in the street might affect you, but who gives a fuck about you? Who wants a friend that doesn't give a fuck about you? That's essentially what your friend is saying here. That these Nazis marching in the street, these people on this email chain celebrating the death of Heather Heyer, mocking Heather Heyer. Oh, it doesn't really affect me. I'm just going to keep my head down. Hope this passes. When did we hear that last? Where have we heard that before? Yeah, you should have nothing to do with this shitty person, and you should tell this shitty person who is not your friend why you're having nothing to do with them anymore. This is a time where people are going to have to start taking stands like this. This is a time when people are going to have to disown family if their family is embracing white supremacist or Nazi ideology, marching with the Nazis, or making excuses for the Nazis, or making excuses for themselves that they're not standing up against the Nazis. There was a family, a father disowned his son because his son is a white supremacist. His son participated in the rallies in Charlottesburg, and the father in this family, I think in Wyoming, released a public letter saying that his kid was no longer welcome at family events, no longer a part of their family. Your fiance's friend needs to do the same if he is at all interested in having a relationship with you and your fiancé. If he's willing to be your friend, if he is indeed your friend, he won't stand up to his brother. He is not your friend. And you don't want people who aren't your friends at your wedding, and you don't want to go to parties at the houses of people who are not your friends. This is a tipping point. This is a moment of reckoning in this country. For each of us as individuals, for the country as a whole, for political parties, the media, everybody's going to have to decide whose side they're on. And not taking a side is to take the side of the white supremacists and the Nazis who are marching in the streets. So, yeah, fuck that guy. And his brother, the Nazi. Fuck them both. Don't go to the party for their kids, and you can send them an unsave the date notice to your wedding and explain why they can unsave the date. No parties for Nazis, no party invites for Nazis, no wedding invites to Jewish weddings, no wedding invites to any weddings for Nazis. And it's not just Nazis you don't want at your wedding. You don't want their enablers, whether they're family or not. You don't want people at your wedding or in your life who are enabling neo-Nazism in the United States, laughing at it or complicit in it, complicit in what happened in front of the Beth Israel Synagogue in Charlottesville. Yeah, fuck this guy, fuck his brother, fuck this fantasy football league, fuck that email chain, and fuck people who will not stand up to their Nazi relatives because their Nazi relatives' Nazism doesn't affect them personally.
Hi, Dan. I'm a 29-year-old living in a medium-sized city in New England. Recently, I noticed a guy had a troubling phrase on his Grindr profile. It read, "Islamization kills," and was surrounded by rainbow flags. I recognized him. We have a lot of mutual friends, and like I mentioned, this is a medium-sized city, so in gay terms, it's an everyone knows everyone kind of community. I sent him a message asking why he singled out Islam versus other religions that have violent ideologies, and I'll spare you the details of a really obnoxious conversation, but he started using a lot of alt-right dog whistle phrases like cuckery and tried to argue a lot of their talking points. So this isn't a sex question. I don't fuck Nazis. This is more of a social question. A lot of people in town know he's an alt-right wacko, though they may not know the full extent of it. But he's hot, so they keep him around. I wouldn't invite him over to my house for any reason, but I know my friends invite him to theirs. So I'm going to run into this guy at parties. I'm going to see him at one of our 2 gay bars, and I have before. So my question is, when I do see him out and about, am I just supposed to act like this guy isn't bigoted against Muslims when he shows up to a Game of Thrones watching party where my Muslim friend is sitting next to me? I'm fine to be cordial, but I kind of want to call it out and do my part to fight against bigotry in my small gay community. Say to him, I don't know, like, oh, wait, you're the guy who hates Muslims, right? Do you also hate Jewish people? I don't know. I think that might be a bad idea, but I don't know what to do. I feel like I need to do something. Like, in the interest of decorum, should I just be nice and avoid him in places he goes? Should I tell my friends if he's going, I don't want to be around this Nazi nonsense? I don't know. So any suggestions would be helpful.
I remember when I met a hot gay Nazi. It was decades ago. I was a teenager. I had just come out of the closet, and I had a friend who introduced me to his new boyfriend, who was scorchingly hot, and then later told me that his boyfriend was a Nazi, had a swastika flag over his bed, would go on and on about how the Third Reich really wasn't that bad, and Hitler didn't kill that many Jews. Apparently there's a kill Jews threshold where you go from good to bad, and Hitler hadn't exceeded it in this guy's opinion. And I never spoke to my friend again because I didn't want to be friends with Nazis or fuck Nazis, and I didn't want to be friends with anyone who would fuck a Nazi just because he was a hot Nazi. Hotness is no excuse for being a Nazi or for fucking a Nazi. It was easy for me, though, to drop this friend and to never see him again because Chicago, where I grew up, where I was living at the time, it's a relatively big town with lots of gay bars, then even a lot more gay bars then than there are now in Chicago because apps hadn't come along yet. And cutting this person out of my life was pretty simple. It may be harder for you in your small community to cut this person out of your life. I do think, though, that there should be some accountability for this person, that you know what you know about him and he's espoused to you the shit that he has espoused to you, and you should be open about it, perhaps not with him. You don't have to walk up to him and see him in one of the two gay bars in your town and punch him in the face. Please don't punch this Nazi. You can let your friends know, whoever's hosting this Game of Thrones viewing party, that there's a contradiction here. You're inviting someone who hates Muslims to a party where you've also invited my good friend that I'm sitting next to on the couch, who is a Muslim. And maybe you're going to have to pick one or the other at this particular moment. Pick your Muslim friend or my Muslim friend, or pick the deranged, hot, alt-right, confused Nazi nutbag in our social circle. And hopefully your friends will pick you and your Muslim friend over this guy who sounds like an asshole. You might want to send this guy, if you have his email address, a link to the videos that are circulating right now of the alt-right marchers in Charlottesville chanting, "Fuck you, faggots," at counter demonstrators. The people that he's in bed with, politically, don't like him any more than they like Jews or Muslims or democracy. So yeah, fuck this guy. Talk about this guy. Talk about him with the people who are inviting him to these parties, people who are putting up with him because he's hot. Let them know that you don't think it's okay for them to include this person because of his odious political beliefs. And the guy's abs are no excuse, and his lovely tits are no excuse, and his high cheekbones or whatever else that is that makes him hot, no excuse. A hot Nazi should be no more welcome in your local gay bar or at your Game of Thrones viewing party than a fugly fucking Nazi. Okay, that's a lot of calls like that. That's a lot of people with Nazi relatives and friends and faggots in their community, and we're going to pivot now from the calls about this political moment and take some regular sex and relationship calls instead. Prioritize those instead for the rest of the show, I promise. Have you ever read 4 books in one day? Now you can get what you need to know from a nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. Introducing the Blinkist app, over 2,000 of the best-selling nonfiction books transformed into powerful packs you can read or listen to in just 15 minutes. With Blinkist, now you can feast your mind on the key ideas from top best-selling nonfiction books like The Secret to Love That Lasts, The Sex Myth, The Gap Between Our Fantasies, Come As You Are, The Surprising New Science That Will Transform Your Sex Life. If you're just reading, you'll get through maybe 1 book a week, but with the Blinkist app, you can get the key insights from 2 to 3 books on your way home. Learn the essential ideas from the best books in your field, covering topics like productivity, business, science, and self-improvement. Plus, you can uncover subjects you never knew you loved and help you decide if you want to buy a book and read the whole thing the old-fashioned way. Their team of experts is constantly curating and adding new titles from best of lists, so you know you're always getting the most powerful ideas distilled so that you can hear them in just 15 minutes or less in a made-for-mobile format. Right now, Blinkist has a special offer just for my listeners. Go to Blinkist.com/savage right now to start your free trial or get 3 months off your yearly plan when you join today. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist, Blinkist.com/savage to start your free trial or get 3 months off your yearly plan. Blinkist.com/savage.
Hi, Dan. Okay, let me do this properly. 27-year-old queer female from the UK. I got into a relationship with a boy, and it's new territory for me because I've always had relationships with women in the past. I like him a lot. We have really good sex. He's aware of my kinks. I really enjoy his company. But I know that he is not enough for me, really, in the long term. I'm not heterosexual, and I imagine myself in the future being with a woman, and that's what I want. Right now, I like him. I want to suggest perhaps being polyamorous, like maybe he can sleep with people and I can sleep with people, i.e. other women, and maybe that will satisfy me. But he's very heterosexual, and he's quite uncomfortable with the monogamish world. Another reason I'm hesitant to suggest polyamory is because I've laid a lot on him already. I've let him into a lot of personal things, mainly that I do a bit of sex work. I'm into BDSM. I'm currently getting over a pretty strong drug addiction, and I'm on long-term antidepressants, which he's dealt with all really, really well and is really supportive and great, and I'm really thankful for that. But I feel like, I don't know, am I just being stupid to get into a relationship with this guy when I like him now, but I know that it's not what I want in the long term, as well as asking him to deal with all of my other shit. It seems like it's just a step too far to ask him to do this. And I think maybe, I don't know whether the best thing is to just walk away from it. I don't know. Any advice, please? Thank you.
You say this guy isn't right for you, but maybe he's right for you right now. And maybe instead of making the choice for him by dumping him because he might not be what you want for the long term, you can share everything that you've just shared with us with him, and then let him make a choice about whether he wants to continue to see you, knowing it might not be a forever relationship. Don't get LTR blindness. Some people have LTR blindness, where they look at someone they're seeing or dating, and if they can't game it out to 6 decades together, they can't see the next 60 years flying by with this person, they think there's no value in this relationship. A relationship can be short term. A relationship can last an evening, a weekend, a few months, a year, and have value. And both people could look back on that time together and treasure it. It doesn't have to potentially be a forever thing for it to be a thing that you can stick around for and enjoy and grow during and from and look back on with joy in your heart after. So don't get LTR blindness. Don't let the LTR obsession in our culture prevent you from enjoying what may be just a short-term relationship with this dude, or who knows? You lay the polyamory thing at his feet. You lay open relationship at his feet. Might not be what he wants over the next few months, but after you guys are together for 9 months or a year, and maybe he gets to know some of your friends in polyamorous relationships, maybe he will open to the idea. And over the long term, you could have him and the woman of your dreams in your life as well. You just can't know. Don't close this off because you can't predict what'll happen over the long term. Maybe 6 months, a year, 2 years, and then you guys will part ways and be friends for life and always a part of each other's lives and always have love for each other and be there for each other. Or who knows, maybe in a year or two after he gets to meet and know some of your polyamorous friends, he may open to that idea. He may be open to that idea right now. It doesn't sound like you've broached the subject with him. So don't pull the plug on this relationship in anticipation of it maybe not working out. It's definitely not going to work out if you pull the plug on it because it might not work out. Stick around. And work out here is defined as it lasted forever or it lasted for 6 months and it was a good 6 months. There are different kinds of ways that different kinds of relationships can work out. But usually what people mean when they say, I can't see this working out, or it's not going to work out, it's not going to work out for 6 decades. You can have a good and fulfilling and satisfying and loving short-term relationship too.
This episode of the Savage Lovecast is brought to you by Squarespace. Whether you need a landing page, a beautiful gallery, a professional blog, or an online store, it's all included with your Squarespace website. Creating your site with Squarespace is a simple, intuitive process. Do you run your own business? You can design a great-looking online store with Squarespace's award-winning templates, customizable settings, and more, all without a single plugin. From nationally recognized brands to your favorite local shops, Squarespace is trusted by hundreds of thousands of savvy shop owners around the world, including all the tools you need to track inventory, process orders, and send custom emails in one intuitive interface. Squarespace Commerce allows you to understand every aspect of your business. Start your free trial today at squarespace.com and enter the offer code SAVAGE to get 10% off your first purchase. That's squarespace.com and enter the offer code SAVAGE.
Hi, Dan. I'm a 42-year-old gay man, and I've been married to my husband for 13 years. Throughout our marriage, I've always been open to being monogamish, but my husband was adamantly against it. So I employed your strategy and let him know that I was open to it if he ever changed his mind. About 2 months ago, he met someone online that flipped the switch, and he approached me about opening our relationship. At first, I was pretty excited, but I learned more details, and I became a little less so. Because he has a strong love, emotion, sex connection, he wants to pursue a romantic relationship with this guy. And since the guy lives 5 hours away, they've only been able to talk by phone and text. So last weekend, the guy came and stayed with us for the weekend so they could meet in person, and they had a pretty strong connection. So I gave my husband permission to spend the night with him in our guest room, and it went really well for him. It was really difficult for me, and but we were able to have a threesome the next morning. First time ever for my husband to have that kind of thing happen. And it was really amazing for all of us. However, my husband is now making plans to go visit this guy for 1 weekend a month moving forward, and I feel like I'm in over my head. I don't really want to be in a poly kind of arrangement, and I feel like this might be heading that direction. The thing is, our relationship has never been stronger and our communication has never been better. We talk about this every day. We talk about our feelings. I feel like we can talk about anything now, which we've never had before. But he knows that I have anxiety about where this is heading, and he doesn't want to stop. But he says he will at my request. But now I feel like stopping it might damage our relationship and send things into a worse state than they were before. I have no idea what to do, Dan. I'm hoping that you can help.
I'm from the school of open gay relationship thought that it's better to have a regular very special guest star than a parade of randos, which is actually pretty easy for gay men or gay couples to arrange. You can get on Grindr, you can go out to the bars, and you can have a different guy every time you guys have a different guy. And there's certainly upsides to that, or around emotional security, because you're not going to form a romantic attachment to someone that you are never, ever going to see again. But I think that it comes bundled with other risks. You're likelier to end up in bed with somebody who is uncaring or lousy at it or crazy or dangerous the more people you parade through your lives and parade through your guest bedroom and master bedroom. Seems to me, though, that you may prefer that model of open relationship, that you are concerned about a romantic attachment. You don't want to be in a polyamorous relationship. An open relationship, sure, but a polyamorous relationship where there is affection and emotional connection and ongoing romantic attachment to your very special guest star, that leaves you feeling uncomfortable. You and your you and your husband need to discuss that. You need to come to terms about that. Come to some sort of agreement about that. You're telling him he can't have sex with other people, but you are not yet ready for him to have a relationship, an ongoing attachment to, a romantic attachment to someone else, particularly if it involves him disappearing for a weekend a month and abandoning you at home to run off and have romantic dinners and hang out with this guy. Seems to me, though, that there might be a compromise that you can make with your husband at this moment about this particular guy. What your husband is asking you to let him disappear on you a weekend a month, every fourth weekend he's gone and you're left at home alone, that's a big ask. It might be easier for you to let him have this guy if letting him have this guy once a month means having him under the same roof with you. And you are also then free to have this guy, to have three-ways with this guy as well. That it's a bit more of a shared relationship and a shared very special guest star, and not someone your husband has all to himself 1 weekend a month and who has your husband all to himself 1 weekend a month. That is a big ask. Not just to have this guy, but to run off and abandon you and have this guy. So there are ways in which opening up your relationship, in your own words, you said, has improved your relationship. You're having better communication. You two are having better sex. A lot of people find, a lot of long-term couples find that to be true of their experience when they open a relationship. But opening a relationship comes bundled with risks. It complicates things, keeps things interesting. You'll never run out of shit to talk about, but there are emotional risks. And you two have to prioritize each other's emotional security. And if your husband won't do that, he's too blinded by lust or NRE, new relationship energy, for this guy to prioritize your emotional security, to accommodate your reasonable requests. And I think this guy coming to your house once a month might be a reasonable request. Ending things with this guy might be an unreasonable request, but sometimes to preserve the primary relationship, an unreasonable request has to be honored. It's a way someone demonstrates to their partner that they are the person who still comes first to them. Could, though, like you said, like you anticipate, could create resentment. If he has to never see this guy and only fuck randos for your comfort, he may have to grieve that and work through that resentment. But you're his husband, and hopefully you're worth a little grief and swallowing a little resentment. But you liked the guy. You liked having sex with the guy. Try my alternative suggestion first. Try telling your husband on a provisional basis, next few months, you're open to this guy coming to see you both, but you are not open to your husband running off to see this guy on his own. Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. They make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone, including people like me. And Blue Apron achieves this by supporting a more sustainable food system, setting the highest standards for ingredients, and building a community of home chefs. And you know, when they say they make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone, it's true, because I am cooking. This is something I have never done in my adult life. I am cooking fancy, delicious, kind of restaurant quality, restaurant level meals from my husband, from my kid, me, the guy who could only make toast and hot water before Blue Apron came along. I am whipping up fancy things that everyone enjoys and developing skills that I'm applying even when I am not cooking Blue Apron. I am cooking. It is a miracle. For less than $10 per person per meal, you can be cooking too. Blue Apron will deliver seasonal recipes along with pre-proportioned ingredients that'll help you make delicious home-cooked meals. Choose from a variety of new recipes each week, or let Blue Apron's culinary team surprise you. Recipes are not repeated within a year, so you will never get bored, and you can customize your recipes each week based on your preferences. Blue Apron has several delivery options, so you can choose what fits your needs, and there is no weekly commitment, so you only get deliveries when you want them. Here are a couple of items on the menu coming up: barbecue baked chicken with sweet potato salad and garlicky green beans, and vegetable lo mein with fairy tale eggplants and bok choy. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals for free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/savage. Support the Lovecast and get 3 meals for free. blueapron.com/savage. You'll love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so do not wait. That's blueapron.com/savage. Blue Apron, a better way to cook.
Hey, Dan, I'm a tech savvy at rescue. I'm a 28-year-old bisexual male in a poly-monogamous relationship, and I would like to know if you have ever heard of a person coming on command.
I have heard of this, but I've only heard of this in DS contexts, where somebody, always a man, talks about how he's trained his slave, always a woman, to come on command. And they will, I've been to fetish parties where someone has performed this and ordered his sub to come on command, and she very dutifully had an orgasm. Interestingly enough, you never see the reverse. You never see a female dominant who can order a male submissive to come on command. And why is that? Well, because it's a lot harder for men to fake orgasms. My belief is all this come on command horseshittery is horseshit. Women can fake orgasms. Men, if they're not inside someone, really can't fake an orgasm very convincingly. So, yes, I've heard of this, and it is bullshit. But if there is anyone out there, a woman, not a male dominant, who comes on command, not a male dominant calling in to tell me about all the women he's trained to come on command, I would love to hear from you. In fact, I command you to call in and tell us how exactly that works.
Hey, Dan, this is in regards to episode 565 about the woman who was questioning her boyfriend on privacy. I know that you said option 1 is that he's dense, or option 2 is that he's an asshole, and I would totally agree with you normally, but she had mentioned some things that made me wonder if maybe her boyfriend might be on the autism spectrum with maybe a very mild case of Asperger's. I've known some people and worked with some people that you would think that they had no diagnosis at all, with the exception of some very interesting social habits, and one of those being having issues with privacy, whether they don't want their bubble intruded on, or kind of like in this case where they don't know boundaries between other people and cross those boundaries on a regular basis. So I don't know. We didn't get a lot of information from her in regards to some other behaviors, but it kind of sounds like that may be an option for her.
Dan, I am a long-time listener of yours. I would say about twice a month you have a caller, usually a woman I would say, who can't fucking speak up. And look, I'm not mad at the woman who can't tell her boyfriend to not come to her fucking house when she's not fucking there. I'm just saying I get mad because I see it in myself as a woman that we can't speak up for ourselves. And listen, girl, dump him. He sucks. He's coming to your house when you asked him not to. That's some creepy ass shit. Tell him no. Women, tell the men in your life no if they're doing something you don't fucking like. You're too beautiful. You're too precious. Don't waste your time.
Hi, I'm just calling about the guy who came back from the military and was working on himself, and he couldn't turn his wife on no matter what he did. And you advised him to ask his wife, which I think is great advice, except for I think you kind of missed the deeper issue. He told us straight up at the beginning of the call that he hadn't been a very good husband. And while it's great that he's working on himself, probably, to me, at least as a woman, I think the sexual issues probably have a lot more to do with him being an asshole to her in the past. And they have to work through that shit, probably in therapy, before they have any hope of having a good sex life. Women get turned on when they trust their partners, and if he's hurt her in the past, it doesn't matter what he does in bed. She's not going to respond.
And we're going to leave it there. 206-302-2064 is the number here at the Savage Lovecast. If you want to record a question or a comment for a future show, give us a buzz, 206-302-2064. The Savage Lovecast, that's us. We're going to present a special show October 12th at the Egyptian Theater in Seattle and October 13th at the Orpheum Theater in Vancouver, BC. It's going to be me, Dan Savage, and Esther Perel, author of Mating in Captivity and new book, State of Affairs. We'll be answering your questions live, having a convo about Esther's work and Esther's books, and Esther will be signing copies of her new book after the show. Go to tinyurl.com, tinyurl.com/Dan and Esther, or the events section of my Facebook page for more info and to get tickets. Follow me on Twitter at Fake Dan Savage. Follow Deb Hauser's organization, Advocates for Youth, on Twitter at Advocates Tweets. The Savage Lovecast is produced every week by Nancy Hartunian and me and the tech-savvy at-risk youth and Nancy. I'll be back at you next week with an installment of the Savage Lovecast. Thanks for now.